Alright, let's try this again. So I made a video earlier and I posted it. Thankfully, not many of you actually saw it. But one of you, who did see it, Bryce, noticed a different Tim in that video and made a comment about it. And when I read your comment, I actually felt physically sick. Not because of your comment, but because I realized that I hadn't even realized how I'd come across in that video. And that if that was the reaction that you had to the video because of how I presented myself, then that was a massive problem and not something that I ever wanted to do, and not something that I ever want to do again. So I do want to apologize for the tone of that video. If you didn't see the video, don't worry about it. Because what I'm going to try to do now is make the video that I should have made earlier. So this is round two. Recap of yesterday. I did all the squats. That was hard, but it worked out. Today, I recorded most of a new song that I will hopefully be sharing with you in the near future. But now to the part that I completely failed at earlier. R. Roberts. We've been talking about some politics, some economics. And you were saying that the president didn't have a lot to do with the economic success or failure. And I would disagree with that for a couple of reasons. And this is all based on firsthand experience and watching people I know who own their own businesses, who run their own businesses, and how they interacted with different things. So when President Obama got into office, some of the things that he wanted to do, some of the regulations he wanted to pass, and he did pass, and the way that he talked about businesses was not encouraging to a lot of businesses. That's just the reaction that I got from the people who I knew and know who run their own businesses. What Obamacare did for businesses was stop a lot of small businesses from even attempting to grow any bigger because they knew they couldn't afford to because of the new regulations that existed. The cost of having to provide insurance for full-time employees once they hit a certain level was more than they could actually cope with. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't deal with it. And so they didn't grow. And some companies actually cut back their employees' hours to all part-time, which is a problem. And some of the economic factors that people look at, unemployment specifically, they change the way that they report those numbers. They decided that people who were no longer looking for a job would no longer be considered unemployed because they weren't looking for a job. So all of a sudden unemployment's coming down, even though there's another factor that I look at that I think is important, and that is the workforce participation. That means the percentage of the workforce eligible people who are actually in the workforce, who are actually working. And it was at I want to say a 30 or 40 year low. Even though unemployment was really low, the workforce participation was actually way lower, which doesn't quite add up unless they've changed some of the ways they report those numbers. That's just what I personally saw and experienced during Obama's presidency as it related to economics and how it affected the businesses that I interacted with. And just so that is why I believe that it does have an effect. And I also know from those same people who run their own businesses that since Trump has been elected, there has been an uptick in confidence that we now have a pro-business government. He's talked about cutting taxes on businesses, cutting taxes on individuals, and rolling back some of the regulations. He removed the mandate for Obamacare, so you don't have to provide that, which means a massive cost that was there is no longer there. And that has led to a boost in confidence in the people that I know who run their own businesses. And that's what we're really talking about here, because the people who are running the businesses, who create the jobs, are the ones that you really want to look at. Not necessarily all the employees, because if it's not for the people who own the business, they don't have a job. So that's who I look at as a good economic factor, the people running the businesses, people who are owning them. And so I've just seen that that's the case. And if you look at the job creation numbers since Donald Trump's been president. Now, again, all I'm talking about is the economic policies and how it appears to me that they're affecting people. And when you look at the job growth, it has exceeded expectations by a significant number every quarter so far since he's been elected. And to me, that tells me that people are adding more jobs. And some of the big manufacturers who have come back, who have opened and pledged to open new places, have even said that they're doing this because of the pro-business platform and because of the policies. Now, again, I'm not defending the person Donald Trump. I'm talking just about the policies that Donald Trump has espoused as they relate to the business sector, to economics. All right? So that's what I mean when I say that I think a president has a big effect on the economics and how businesses view their future. So that is why I would disagree that the president doesn't have a huge effect. I don't think they did in the past. But I think with all of the regulations that sort of have the presidents have over the past several presidencies have just taken more and more power on the executive, which I think is a problem. Like, I don't actually agree with it, but I think it's a problem. But they've taken more and more power on the executive actions and different things, and some of the policies that you don't need to push through Congress, some of the regulations you don't need to push through Congress. You just appoint somebody and they just make the rules. It's taken more power and put it in the hands of the president, and that's why I think he has more power now than they used to. So that is my take on it. Now, I made a comment in the first video and I said it very, very poorly, and I do apologize for the way I said that. So I'm going to try this again as it relates to some of the energy sector. I made a comment about coal and how the coal mines are opening up, people are working again, and just the fact that there was sort of an attack on coal. Now, I know that coal is not the cleanest energy out there. I do know that, but where I think that there is an issue is that coal is portrayed as this epic, awful thing, and we talk about these clean energy things, right? These clean energy options. But we don't really ever talk about is the fact that all this clean energy is leading to an awful large number of batteries. And the production we are creating and the power that we're creating and the battery storage that we're creating, they all have a shelf life. They're not infinite use batteries. But once you're done with them, they can't just be destroyed the same way. They can't be gone away with. And the actual production of the batteries, the shipping of the batteries, and everything associated with that, it actually pollutes a lot more than people even think that it does. And then once it's done, you're left with this battery, this toxic thing that you got to go find a place to put. So there's more to this whole idea of clean energy and what that actually means than just painting and saying, well, coal is evil and these other energy sources are better unequivocally because coal makes the air dirtier, right? So that's where I have an issue, and that's where I think it's gotten political, because we're only really talking about part of the issue. We're not looking at the whole scope, and that's where I think there is a problem. Again, in the coal technology, the technology that they've done and to make it more and more clean has made a massive impact. Again, I don't think coal is the wave of the future in energy. I think eventually it's going to become obsolete. But I just think that there's a lot of politics involved in attacking one and propping up another, even to the point of sort of only telling half of the story. And that's really where my problem is. I would love it if all of these clean energy options were actually economically feasible and were truly as clean as people are talking about. But from what I've seen, there's just more to that story, and there's a lot of long-term ramifications that aren't being talked about, and to me, that's why I say it's political. There's a lot of political motivation behind it. Now, the thing is, everything's political. So if you agree with the politics behind it, okay. But just to acknowledge that there is a lot of politics involved, and that's why I take everything with a grain of salt and I go, okay, is it really as clean as you say it is? Is it really as perfect as you say it is? And are these people who are pushing for all this clean energy and pushing for all of these things actually living this out themselves? And what you find is that that's not always the case. You have politicians pushing an agenda, and then their own life doesn't actually represent, they believe that agenda. And that's where I have an issue. That's where I get skeptical, and I say, okay, I'm gonna have to not just take this all at face value. I'm not just going to accept what you said is true. So, again, if you watched the first video, I do apologize. That's not me, and that's why I got rid of it. I didn't want that to be up there, knowing that that's not really how I view myself or how I want to be viewed. So, do apologize for that. Hopefully, this video is a better representation of who I am. Even though, I mean, look, you can disagree with me politically. That's totally fine. And I encourage that. I love conversation. I love debating back and forth and having these conversations. And that's the saddest part to me, is that the first video that I made conveyed a very different sentiment than that. And I'm very sorry about that. So there you go. That's the video that I should have made earlier. And if this is the first video you've seen today, then great. That's awesome. If you happen to be one of the people who watched the video earlier, well, this is what should have been posted, I think. Feel free to continue to disagree with me, or, have any issues that you want with this video. Have at it. Have at it. I welcome the conversation. All right. I will see y'all tomorrow.